Robert Paarlberg, you have written many books about the politics of food. Your research is mostly in the area of international food and agriculture policy. And today we're here to talk about your new book, Resetting the Table, a straight talk about the food we grow and eat. Robert, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
So this is a topic of great controversy. Of course, all of us eat, and all of us argue that the source of the food that I eat is better than the source of the food that you eat. Of course, some people don't really care. Some people just want to pack all those calories, but nevertheless, it's a topic of conversation that never goes away. So I think your book is popular not only now, but it will be popular for the next 100 years. I wonder if we could start talking about your background. What is it that led you towards, I mean, you have written many books about politics and food. What is it that led you towards this way of life?
Well, that's easy. My dad grew up on a farm in Indiana. He went on to become an agricultural economist and then a senior government official. It's the family business, is what it comes down to.
Robert, I'm sorry. I wonder if there was a cutoff in the internet connection. I don't know why, because I'm connected to a cable, but the connection went off when you said that is easy. My father, and can you continue again?
Well, that's easy. My father grew up on a farm in Indiana. He went on to become an agricultural economist and then a senior official in the Department of Agriculture. His brother took over the farm. I worked on the farm when I was a teenager in the summer months. His other brother managed the farms at Purdue University for a number of years. And on my mother's side, her father was an agricultural economist and her brother was a soil scientist. So I'm pretty deeply steeped in the agricultural side of these issues.
Wow, so there was no escape for you. Can you tell me, when you work on that farm, what exactly were you doing?
Well, you get up before the sun. You get up in the dark. The first thing you have to do is feed the animals.
What kind of animals?
Well, my uncle had he had steers. He had Hereford steers, beef cattle. You fed and watered them, and he had pigs. You fed and watered them. I didn't have to collect the eggs. Other people collected the eggs, but the animals. And he did not have dairy cows when I worked on the farm. But the animals are the most demanding part of the farm labor problem, and it's a task that's usually handed off to the kids twice a day at least. They have to make sure that the animals are getting proper care.
And let me ask you, is it true that some people fall in love with those animals? I met a woman who had a farm, and she told me that she would fall in love with the little cows that would grow up so big, and then it was heartbreaking for her to separate from the cows that she saw growing up since she was they were little cows.
Yeah, I tell a story in my book about a farmer in Illinois who remembers having raised a calf when she was a little girl for a 4-H project. When the calf is ready at a market weight, you take it to the county fair. If it wins a blue or a red ribbon, you have to stay with the calf right there at the fairgrounds until it's sold. You have to take the calf into the auction ring, and it's sold to someone who's going to take it away and kill it for meat. And when young kids confront that reality, it's usually a highly emotional moment.
Wow, wow. But we have been separated from that reality. At one time, we used to have slaughterhouses right there in the city, and people used to see that as a regular, everyday spectacle. For some people, it was amusing, but some people, they would get grossed out. And eventually, it was taken away from the city.
Yeah, the way animals are raised and the way that they are slaughtered are sometimes two very different things. In the United States, uh, the slaughtering of animals is highly regulated,
Mm,
and it tends to be yeah, instantaneous
mm,
and quite often unanticipated by the animals, you hope. And it measures up to a fairly high standard, higher standards than you might find in some countries that don't have advanced industrial livestock systems. But raising the animals is a different story. In our industrial livestock systems, often the animals are too tightly confined. It makes the animals easier to manage, but it compromises their welfare. It frustrates their instincts. It frustrates their physical comfort. And often these animals have been overbred uh, for, for food purposes, and it leaves them with uh, an imbalance in their metabolic function, and it sometimes leaves them in a diseased state. So in the United States, ironically, we do a better job of slaughtering the animals sometimes than we do of raising the animals. In other countries, it can be just the other way around.
wow. I have heard in the news that it has become illegal in certain states to go into some of those farms and film how those animals are raised because, of course, it's not good PR for the farms. Are you familiarized with any of those
Yeah,
initiatives?
some state laws are called gag
Hmm.
laws, and they block activists from surreptitiously surreptitiously going into either animal feeding operations or slaughterhouses and taking videos of what goes on. Um, it hasn't stopped them, and on a number of occasions, the videos have come out at sensitive moments and have helped the Humane Society of the United States to push through ballot propositions to get rid of practices they don't like. I have a significant part of one chapter describing the ballot campaigns run by the Humane Society of the United States. I'm a big fan of this organization. They're not like PETA. They don't they don't do stunts. They don't throw paint on fur coats. They look for something the industry might eventually be able to accept. They put it on a ballot and they campaign and they get majority votes at election time, and it moves the needle forward on animal welfare. And sometimes these ballot campaigns are assisted by the publication or the dissemination of videos from inside the industry that outrage ordinary voters who don't want animals to be treated that way.
Wow. Okay. So I'm sorry, I derail you a little bit. So we were talking that you practically had no choice but to study the food farming and food production. So what happened there? You went to school and then what did you study? And then what was, I know that you
Yeah,
became a
well,
professor, but can you tell us how a little bit about that
I,
journey?
I never studied agriculture in school. By the time I went to college, I went to Carleton College in Minnesota. Once again, it's a Midwestern school. Uh, and my greatest concern at the time was avoiding military service in Vietnam. so, so I studied international relations, and I went on to get a PhD in international relations and taught international relations in United States foreign policy at Wellesley College in Massachusetts. But it didn't take long for me to realize that I had not just a personal history, but a deep interest in international food and agriculture. I, I enjoy international travel, and I knew that this would be my ticket to multiple trips to just about every continent on the planet. If I could get myself onto the circuit of academic specialists working in this area, and I did that in part by getting my degree in international relations and political science rather than in agricultural economics. The field of food and agriculture policy tends to be dominated by agricultural economists, and they're very good. And I didn't want to compete with all those good agricultural economists, so I became a political scientist, international relations specialist, and that created a seat for me around the table. You don't have to produce agricultural economics to be respected by the economists, but you do have to read what they've written. If you can talk about what they've written, they'll welcome you into the club. So I was usually the odd political scientist in a group of agricultural economists studying international food and agriculture.
Okay, and since this is the subject of your interest, can you tell us about some of the titles of the books that you have written, and yeah, what are they about?
Yeah, my first book was written after the United States imposed a grain embargo on the Soviet Union back in 1980 in order to punish them for their invasion of Afghanistan. That's back when the Soviet Union was invading Afghanistan instead of the United States. So this was a book about how food is sometimes used as a diplomatic weapon. Then I did a book about the reform of international agricultural trade policy in the 1980s. There were repeated rounds of negotiations in the GATT, which is what preceded the World Trade Organization. Then I did a book about the reform of U.S. agricultural policy, U.S. domestic agricultural policy, farm subsidy policies. Then I did a book about the international regulation of genetically engineered crops called GMOs. Then I did another book related to that subject on biotechnology in African agriculture. I did a short book on environmentally sustainable agriculture in developing countries. Then it became clear to me that the biggest unsolved food problem in the industrial world was not hunger. It was not the underconsumption of food. It was increasingly the overconsumption of food. So I wrote a book about obesity and obesity policies in the United States compared to Europe and Japan. And in that book, I developed a parallel between America's tendency to overconsume food and its tendency to overconsume fossil fuels. I titled that book, The United States of Excess, The Dark Side of American Exceptionalism. And now this new book is titled Resetting the Table, Straight Talk About the Food We Grow and Eat.
Okay, so I'm familiarized with the book, and you touch in many important subjects, including most of them are misconception about the way that we eat. So can we start with the one that I hear so often, which is if you want to help the local economy, you have to eat locally. It's better for your health. It's better for the environment. So can you tell us exactly what do they mean by eating locally?
Well, there are different definitions of what constitutes local food. The original definition was food that's grown within a 100-mile radius of the consumer. Others, the U.S. Department of Agriculture says, well, if it's grown in state, then it's local, even if it's a state like California, where now north to south, it's, what is it, 700 miles or something like that. The Whole Foods Market says we define local in terms of the time to travel from being picked to the retail destination. Everyone has a different definition of local. What the definition I use is foods that are sold directly to consumers at farmers markets or through CSAs, or directly to schools or restaurants in farm to school or farm to table settings, or foods that are sold through local food hubs, foods that are sold that don't go through the supermarket grid. And the Department of Agriculture, fortunately, uses all of those categories and counts up the dollar value of all the foods that are sold that way.
Wow. And isn't this mostly like a political slogan? I'll give you an example. I live in Quebec, which is a province of Canada, which is about the size of France. Okay, and I hear advertisement, eat locally, eat from Quebec farms, okay, which could be hundreds and hundreds of miles away, while we have New York border, which is only half an hour away, you know? So, but with this slogan, eat locally, they want me to eat something that is farm, who knows where, as opposed to something that is just half an hour away. But it just fits the slogan, and it sounds good politically. You know, I'm helping my
Yeah,
local
yeah.
Quebec,
Well,
Canada
that's
economy.
we can expect local governments out of pure boosterism to say buy our products, and that's completely predictable. But what I'm interested about most of all in this book is dietary health
Right.
and the obesity crisis in the United States, which has continued to worsen. Currently, 42% of American adults are clinically obese. That's 3 times the prevalence of the 1960s. This is I mean, during the pandemic, we're of course momentarily worried about food insecurity because people have lost their jobs, lost their income. School lunches aren't being served. Restaurants have been closed down. We have an interlude now of food insecurity to be concerned with. But the underlying problem, the one that's going to come back and face us when the pandemic is over, is dietary excess. Now, does eating locally rebalance our diet? Does it give us a better diet? When I look at this problem, I say no, that's not going to help. What Americans need is to consume more fresh fruits and vegetables. And if you don't have to be living in Canada, uh, even in upstate New York, it's hard to get locally grown fresh fruits and vegetables during the winter months. You can't get tropical products at all if you're relocalizing your diet. So I worry that relocalizing diets would make our diets worse instead of better. Currently in the United States, we import 1/2 of the fruit that we consume, and we import 1/3 of our fresh vegetables. I think that's terrific. We would have a great deal of trouble replacing those imports if we tried to eat only locally grown products. The so the local food movement is culturally interesting, but the economist in me says consumers aren't going to go for this. They want choice, they want variety, and they want it year round. This is why the direct sales from farms to individuals through farmers markets and CSAs and whatnot in the United States make up only 1% of farm sales. The local food movement just hasn't scaled up very much at all, despite its enormous popularity. In fact, instead of localizing, our food system continues to globalize. Back in 1990, 11% of the food consumed in the United States was imported. Now it's 19%. So, but I don't dismiss the local food movement completely. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Montreal, there's an enterprise called Lufa Farms. I don't know if you're aware of them or not, and they've been quite successful with rooftop growing systems and sales to quality conscious local food consumers. So there's room for almost everything.
Wow.
I don't think we're going to scale up into a Lufa Farms model nationally, but I believe in multi-agriculturalism, not any one approach.
Yeah, right. I mean, it will fall right from the start. I mean, this is a cup of coffee. This comes from Colombia. Just tell Americans don't drink coffee unless it's grown locally, and then it's just gonna fall. It fell right from the start. And then I had a banana came from Honduras, and some oatmeal came from the prairies in Canada. So nothing, I wouldn't be able to have a breakfast. Well,
Yeah, and you haven't even mentioned chocolate.
Yeah. Oh my God, chocolate. You take chocolate away from people and there's going to be a revolt. Well, there are so many topics to cover and I don't want to take us, I don't want to take 5 hours of your time. Can we talk a little bit about industrial imitation meat or maybe factory farming? Where are you in in these points?
Well, I'm an enthusiast for plant-based imitation meats, uh, mostly on environmental grounds, but also on animal welfare grounds and also human medicine grounds. Because our current livestock system is still a little bit too careless in its use of antibiotics to promote the growth of the animals, not to protect their health really, but to promote their growth. And this runs the risk of making uh, antibiotics in human medicine uh, uh, ineffective. Um, so, so I like plant-based imitation meats, from Impossible Foods or from Beyond. These are these are products that have a much smaller environmental footprint than beef patties from live animals. The greenhouse gas emissions from a plant-based beef patty, imitation beef patty, is 90% smaller than from cattle that belch out methane and produce manure that have greenhouse gas emissions. So I don't know exactly how far these products are going to scale up. We don't know that for sure. Their consumption is increasing rapidly, though. Impossible Foods increased its production sixfold in the last year, and it cut its prices twice.
Wow, amazing.
That's an indication that they don't want to just be a niche product. They want to be price competitive with inexpensive ground beef. They want to replace animal-based burger products in the market, and I wish them well. Not every advocate for healthy food shares my view. There's a group out there that rejects plant-based imitation meats because they're ultra processed.
Right, right.
I think, if you throw away the climate protection and the animal welfare and the antibiotic use concerns over the issue of whether something is processed or not, I think you're letting your prior ideological preferences get in the way of real progress. Of course, the
Wow.
next thing that's going to come along is not plant-based imitation meats, but real meat muscle tissue that's grown without animals, muscle tissue that's grown in effect in a petri dish. Cell cultured meat products are going to come along next. They haven't yet uh, reached a price competitive point. They haven't been approved by the Food and Drug Administration, but it's only a matter of time before we start doing this as well, and not just meat products, but fish products as well. If we can grow tuna with cell culturing, we can reduce environmental pressures on marine species, not just environmental pressures on the land and the climate. So, I mean, I don't know when this is going to finally happen, but I'm sure it will. Already, plant-based imitation dairy products have taken over 13% of the fluid milk
Wow.
market. Milk made not from cow's milk, but from almonds or from coconuts or from rice growing fast. We have imitation fur. The fashion industry has replaced animal fur with imitation fur. The shoe industry has replaced leather from animal hides with imitation leather. I think it's only a matter of time before the science improves and the cost comes down and the taste comparisons are favorable. Only a matter of time before we move toward tasty meat-like products that don't require the raising and the slaughtering of all those animals.
Well, do you have an opinion on the movement of veganism? I like to disclose right away. I guess my audience know that I'm a vegan, and I see that at the same way that now we see slavery as something barbaric 200 years ago, 300 or whatever, maybe 100 years from now, we will say, wow, I can't believe we used to do this thing to animals. So I don't know, what's your vision on that?
Yeah, I think veganism is a legitimate personal choice. I think it's still, though, in the realm of a personal choice rather than a social obligation or even an obligation to animals. It's certainly uh, uh, an option that provides adequate nutrition if you do it properly. If you get the vitamin B12 you need, you can be a vegan. I mean, I know you're in Canada instead of in the United States, but some Canadians watch the Super Bowl on Sunday night, and Tom Brady, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, who was a vegan, uh, won his seventh Super Bowl ring. So who's to challenge? Who's to challenge the health benefits of a carefully managed a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet? I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I like fish a little bit too much to become a pure a vegetarian. In my view, what makes uh, the difference for me isn't whether I'm eating the flesh of animals or not. It's how the animals were raised and how they were slaughtered. I believe if the animals are treated well right up to the moment when they experience uh, an almost instantaneous and unanticipated death, then I think you've done well by the animals. You've given them a quality of life that, in many ways, is an improvement over the quality of life that animals in the wild experience. Animals in the wild don't have an easy time. There are the elements they have to worry about, cold and heat. There are predators. There are diseases of all kinds. They have parasitic infections. I mean, the life of an animal in the wild is fraught with danger and difficulty. And when they die, it's seldom instantaneous.
Mm.
Of course, the domesticated farm animals we use for meat are not wild animals anymore. They've been domesticated by us, and that does two things. First, it gives us a huge responsibility for their welfare. Um, we've taken them out of the wild, and we are now responsible for treating these sentient beings in an ethical way. And since we've taken them out of the wild, they can no longer survive in the wild. So we have to be very careful about raising them in ways that imitate the circumstances of wild animals that can do a better job of taking care of themselves. Domesticated animals are easy prey for predators. Chickens outdoors, the hawks and the coyotes get them very quickly. Uh, the uh, the obligation we have to domesticated animals, I believe, isn't to raise them in pasture settings that artificially resemble the circumstances of cattle on the plains in Africa. I think we need to give them comfort and security and health right up to the moment that we take their life for food. And that quite often means, and this surprises people, that quite often means raising them indoors in biosecure barns where they will not contract diseases from rodents or from wild birds or from wild animals or in China from horseshoe bats.
Wow.
I mean, all these zoonotic diseases attack animals that are not being raised in biosecure circumstances. Biosecure barns with plenty of space, plenty of light, not too much noise, and enrichments, including straw, including opportunities to perch. In the European Union, uh, they have a directive that requires pig farmers to give their animals toys.
Wow.
objects that they can manipulate. These are highly intelligent animals and curious animals and easily bored, and their welfare improves dramatically if they have enrichments in their pen to keep
Great.
them interested.
Wow. Professor Paarlberg, this has been an amazing conversation. I wonder if you can tell us one more time the title of the book and where can people find it?
Yeah, the title of the book is Resetting the Table, Straight Talk About the Food We Grow and Eat. You can purchase it on Amazon. It was published 1 week ago, so it's still fresh. And we haven't really talked about 2/3 of the topics I cover in the book.
It's just,
So,
if we did, we'd be here too. Some of the topics are eating organic, genetically modified foods, farm subsidies, the desserts versus food swamps, the cost of healthy versus unhealthy food. So it's so many things that are of great value in this book, and I wish you had 2 hours to spend with us. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you. I enjoyed it a great deal.